mejor. Debería de ganar Julio. Una buena preparación, mentalmente hacerlo bien y debería de ganar él.
One thing that Chavez has is experience. He may not have the youth, you know what I mean, and the agility that Jake has right now, but he does have the experience, and I think that experience will give Jake a problem.
If he beats Chavez Jr.
I don't think so. No.
Boxing pros are divided in their predictions for Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Some believe Jake's youth and recent form give him an edge, while others trust Julio's experience and skill. Canelo picks Julio to win and wishes him luck, saying it's a great chance for redemption.
Justo por Chávez, yo creo que es una oportunidad para él, para que se reivindique y creo que es una oportunidad muy buena para él y confío mucho plenamente que tenga esa victoria. Le deseo lo mejor. Debería de ganar Julio. Una buena preparación, mentalmente hacerlo bien y debería de ganar él.
Mike Perry supports Jake Paul in this unexpected clash and says it would be interesting if Jake defeats Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Perry believes Jake has developed enough skill to actually win and sees this fight as a possible turning point in Jake's career. While many still view Jake as just an entertainer, Perry respects the fact that Jake has been training seriously and committing himself to boxing. Perry's words show growing support from fighters who now view Jake not just as a YouTuber, but as someone genuinely improving with each fight. According to Perry, Jake, discipline and determination may just be enough to pull off the upset against a former world champion.
Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Who you got? That'd be interesting if Jake can beat a guy with such experience, and he's very confident, and I think he might do it. So, yeah, cool. Thank you.
Manny Pacquiao has made it clear that he does not take Jake Paul seriously as a professional boxer. In his view, Jake's background as a content creator does not match up against the experience of someone like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Pacquiao believes that boxing is more than showmanship, and that real fighters go through years of hard training to earn their reputation. Because of that, he does not expect Jake to defeat someone with Julio's background. Pacquiao's opinion reflects how many traditional boxing legends still view Jake as an outsider in a sport that demands respect and legacy.
On Jake Paul and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., if Jake Paul were to win that fight, do you think it legitimizes him as a boxer?
It's hard to comment on that fight, but it's happened that way. It's up to the fans how they analyze it and how they judge it.
But from Hall of Famer Manny Pacquiao's opinion, do you think it legitimizes him if he beats Chavez Jr.?
I don't think so. No.
Oscar de la Hoya sees this match as an important shift in Jake Paul's career. He acknowledges that Jake is now taking on a real boxer with professional experience and believes this shows growth in Jake's approach. At the same time, Oscar gives credit to Jake for being a smart promoter who knows how to build hype around his fights. According to Oscar, this is what makes Jake stand out from others. He understands both the business and performance sides of boxing. Facing Julio proves Jake is ready to test himself, and De La Hoya respects that step up.
Canelo Alvarez fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. We promoted that fight many years ago. Didn't knock him out, couldn't hurt him. So imagine if Jake Paul can hurt or even wobble Chavez Jr. It's something that Canelo didn't do or couldn't do. So Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., it's a real fight. Yeah. Look, people keep talking about Jake Paul, well, he's not a real fighter, this and that. Well, he's fighting a real fighter now in Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. It's going to be a good test for both guys. Obviously, Jake Paul, he's a masterclass promoter in what he does. He's been doing some great things. I mean, Mike Tyson, 60 million people. Fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who, when he trains, when he gets in shape, when he's focused, he will be dangerous for anybody. Look, Canelo Alvarez fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. We promoted that fight many years ago. Didn't knock him out, couldn't hurt him. So imagine if Jake Paul can hurt or even wobble Chavez Jr. It's something that Canelo didn't do or couldn't do. So there's a lot of stories to come out from this, a lot of great stories for Jake Paul. So I just feel honored and proud that we can team up with MVP Promotions, with Jake Paul, and we can make Zurdo Ramirez with Torticos the mandatory. That's going to be a bloodbath in itself, so we're excited.
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has also given his thoughts on the fight. He acknowledges that Jake is still learning the sport and doesn't yet consider him a real boxer. However, he does give Jake some credit for improving and being serious about training. Chavez Sr. sees this match as a big opportunity for both sides, Julio Jr. to prove he still has it, and Jake to show whether he can hang with a true professional. His balanced opinion highlights how even boxing legends are starting to pay attention to Jake's growing journey.
Contento, la verdad, porque es una oportunidad muy buena para mi hijo y vamos a ganarle a Jake Paul.
Obviously, he's excited, happy for his son to be a great fight, and obviously he thinks Junior is gonna win that fight.
How good do you think Jake Paul is as a boxer?
¿Cómo crees que Jake Paul es de boxeador?
Bueno, es un youtuber que ha ido agarrando experiencia, un boxeador. Pues para mí no sabe mucho de boxeo, pero es un boxeador fuerte que está aprendiendo.
Obviously, he's a YouTuber that he started learning about boxing. The continuous fights that he has, it's, had the basics, but he's a strong guy.
Dana White responded to the fight in a very casual and humorous way. When asked about Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he simply said he didn't even know Jake was fighting and laughed about it. This reaction shows how disconnected some people in combat sports are from Jake's boxing career. Dana's comment isn't meant to disrespect, but reflects how unusual and unpredictable Jake's path in boxing has been. Still, the fact that everyone is talking about it proves Jake continues to make headlines in and outside the boxing world.
And then Jake Paul is going head-to-head with you. I guess, what are your thoughts on this Saturday coming up against...
Oh, really? I didn't even fucking know that.
Fight Chavez Jr.
Who's he fighting?
Chavez Jr.
Okay.
Well, what are your thoughts on going head-to-head with your old pal?
Yeah. I didn't even know he was fighting, so that's how concerned I am about it. Yeah, I didn't even know. Huh?
Holly Holmes in the co-man.
Oh, no shit. Who's she fighting?
Some prospects, right?
Yeah. It's not fucking 11 tonight. Okay.
Jake and Chavez is a proper fight, though, isn't it?
What's that?
Jake and Chavez is a proper fight.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I didn't even know that.
Just on the boxing field.
Trainer Robert Garcia is very confident that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. will win this fight. He believes Julio's experience and natural boxing ability are more than enough to take care of Jake Paul. According to Garcia, Julio won't need to put in extra effort or change much about his style. He thinks the difference in class will be clear once the fight begins. Many experts agree with him and believe that Julio will not only win, but use this opportunity to earn millions and remind people that he still belongs in the sport.
I love that dude. He's cool as I love that dude.
Okay, if he wins, what does it say?
Nothing. Chavez is gonna win.
And what does that say if he beats Jake Paul?
Not much. Just a good win. A lot of millions of dollars, and then maybe do a rematch, which is bad. Make a lot of money.
Jeff Mayweather offers a more balanced view of the fight. He admits that Julio used to be a strong opponent, but believes those days are long gone. Jeff compares this matchup to a fighter taking on someone who has passed their prime. It might sound impressive, but the reality may not match the hype. He feels that Jake is using this fight to add a big name to his record, even if Julio is not the same boxer he once was. It's more about reputation than a real challenge in Jeff's eyes.
Canelo back down and all that kind of stuff, but is this, another name that just, like I said, gives the detractors more feel for their fighter? Does this help Jake at all?
I don't think it's really going to help him that much. I mean, it will in the sense that he's fought a legitimate fighter that actually was a professional fighter and a world champion. But to get him after a 5-year layoff and him being inactive is almost just like fighting Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the same thing. It's like an older guy past his prime who hasn't fought in a long time. I guess he doesn't have an MMA career behind him, so maybe that's a good thing, but it's a lot of the same thing that people have always complained about.
But I think this is a fight that Jake can win. Mm-hmm. I mean, legitimately win.
Yeah.
Teofimo Lopez supports Jake's decision to face better opponents. He sees this fight as a positive step forward for Jake, who started with YouTubers and non-fighters. Facing Julio, who is still active and not retired for many years, makes it a more respectable move. Teofimo appreciates the effort and believes that facing real boxers is what will eventually earn Jake proper recognition. According to him, it's a good starting point for someone serious about entering the world of professional boxing.
What's your take on Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez? Who wins? How does that pan out?
People have this debate.
you know, even for us, like, has he faced a real fighter yet? Has he faced a pro fighter yet? I think that it's a great startup to test the waters for Jake Paul. He finds a way to make it entertaining and execute. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., I haven't seen him fight in a while. We'll see what he does. You know, I think this is going to be a good step up for Jake Paul, though, at the end. You know, and see if he's really serious about the boxing world. And I think he has been. You know, he's been showing that with MVP promotions, supporting the women's empowerment on that end. He's been really pushing it. So I think it's exciting for everybody. You know, may the best man win. And, you know, let's see what happens then.
Observers have noticed that Jake Paul is smart in choosing his opponents. He began with fellow influencers, moved on to former athletes, and now he is stepping into the ring with a former champion. At 39, Julio is not at his peak, but still has enough credibility to make this fight matter. Jake is being strategic, fighting names that bring attention while also building his own skills. This pattern shows he is learning how the boxing world works, both inside and outside the ring.
But he has gotten better in opponent selection overall. I mean, starting with going from fighting YouTubers and NBA players to fighting a non-striking MMA fighter who was a 170-pound guy. By the way, Ben Askren is in pretty dire straits health-wise, so prayers go out to Ben Askren. But that was Jake Paul's third fight. Then he fought Tyron Woodley in those back-to-back fights. Now, Tyron Woodley, also an MMA fighter, but although he was a wrestler by trade, he had hands. He stopped Robbie Lawler, who had hands. So by MMA standards, Woodley was a good striker. And say what you want in hindsight, now that we've seen Jake Paul over the course of the last few years, beating Nate Diaz, dropping Anderson Silva in the late rounds and getting a win over Anderson the Spider Silva. Yes, Silva was in his late 40s, but I find Anderson Silva to be the greatest MMA striker of all time. So as we've seen Jake Paul over the years, now we could say, oh yeah, it only makes sense that he would have beaten Woodley by decision in the first fight and knocking him out cold in the rematch. But at the time, the idea that this YouTuber, right, who first shocked us knocking out Nate Robinson, the NBA player or former NBA player, and it was also pretty shocking to see the way that he dropped Ben Askren. I mean, Ben Askren's been in the ring with a lot of vicious strikers over the years. He couldn't make it out of the first round against Jake Paul. So hindsight 2020 vision, it turns out Jake Paul has been taking boxing super seriously and has also been developing new tools along the way. Like, I feel like with each of these Jake Paul fights, generally, he has shown us a different wrinkle in his game. So you could still look at him like he's some sort of a promotional clown or whatever, but in my view, he's been putting the work in, and not only does he have to promote these events, which he does a tremendous job doing for every one of these events, but at the end of the day, he's got to go in the ring and he's got to perform, right? Because if he gets smoked by somebody, it's party's over with the Jake Paul experience.
This fight is a smart move in terms of marketing and revenue. Jake Paul knows how to attract fans, and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. brings legacy and recognition. Together, they make a match that appeals to both hardcore boxing fans and casual viewers. The blend of fame, skill, and drama gives the fight a buzz that many others lack. Financially, this is a win for both sides, and it proves again that Jake understands how to create events people want to see.
Let's find a real boxer. This man's an ex-world champion. He's way smaller when he was competing. Yeah. He had to come up to my weight. He's the son of a legend. I'm now Puerto Rican. Yeah. He's Mexican. It's the best you could do. It's brilliant. Yeah. From a business standpoint, it's brilliant. You can't really do better than that if you're not trying to feed man to the wolves. But you're trying to make it a peso.
But do you reckon it's going to generate numbers?
Good question.
It depends how they market it.
It depends what Chavez comes on.
Yeah.
Because Jake won't be able to push this himself. It depends what Chavez comes on. If Chavez comes on some like, listen, bro,
I'm going to teach you boxing.
I'm going to teach you boxing. Yeah, then it can sell.
That type of energy.
But if he comes on the vibe we know he's on, which is why even his dad don't really mess with him.
Jake Paul has made it clear that he is not treating this as just another event. He says he is training harder than ever and understands the danger Julio brings.
It's not going to be me, but I'm training harder than ever. I know this is my toughest opponent yet. Maybe not the biggest name opponent yet, but it's still going to be a super, super good fight. So make sure everyone pull up Anaheim, California, Ticketmaster.com. Be there, baby.
I was going to say that, you know, do you think this is the toughest opponent? Obviously, he's still a guy who was, you know, he's not all that old. He's got a ton of fights. He's got, I think, 61 pro fights. Think this is the toughest challenge for you if you take everything into consideration?
Yeah, taking everything into consideration and how hard he's training behind the scenes, people saying that this is the most serious he's ever taken a fight, and the fact that he's a former world champion, 30-something knockouts, and I think he wants to put Mexico on his back and represent, and he doesn't want to lose to a guy like me because he knows that's going to hurt his legacy that he's built for himself.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jake, if you see video of him, it looks like he's training hard. I think if there's one criticism, obviously, as you know, of his that people have always said is that, hey, he doesn't train hard, doesn't work as hard as he should, but he's a guy with a lot of talent. But if he is working hard and he does still have that talent, obviously, that could make for a dangerous opponent, couldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I bring out of my opponents. You know, even when I fly sparring partners in, they go harder than they normally do with other guys because they want to prove a point because it's me. They don't want to get beat up by a guy who's only been doing this for 5 years or so. So they always bring their A game, and that's why I'm always at my best as well because I have to bring my A game every time.
Taking this fight is a strategic risk for Jake Paul. Julio has an impressive history in boxing and still carries physical strength and ring knowledge. But in recent years, he has struggled with discipline, weight issues, and staying active in the sport. That mix of danger and vulnerability makes Julio the perfect opponent. Jake gains credibility by choosing someone with a real past in boxing, but also knows that Julio's current form gives him a real chance to win. This is how Jake has built his career, picking opponents who bring name value but are beatable if he stays sharp.
Able to fight, and he's taking this far more serious, and he's not struggling with addiction issues like he has for so long in his pro career. This fight does become a little bit of a dangerous one for Jake, not because Chavez Jr. is in his prime anymore. He's still going to be a shell of that early 20s Julio Cesar Chavez. But with 60 wins under his belt, if there is still any of that muscle memory left, there's still any go left in his body because, again, I hate to keep referring to it, doing drugs or having addiction issues does take its toll on your body, and sometimes it isn't recoverable, especially as you're going up in weight. Julio Cesar Chavez, not a normal cruiserweight, so he's going to be moving up as he gets older. How does that entail what he's going to do in this fight? I don't know, but I'll tell you, I watched him ringside against Uriah Hall, and it wasn't an impressive performance when he beat Uriah Hall in a 6-round fight. Honestly, when I watched the fight back, it looked like the only reason he beat Uriah Hall in that fight was because Uriah, like most MMA fighters, when they come to boxing, don't take credence of the rule set, right? They get hit with a ton of shots that don't hurt them, but also they're getting hit with shots that are scoring against them. Uriah Hall didn't look overwhelmed in that fight at all. In fact, he looked like he was in the fight with Chavez Jr. And that in its own right is pretty damning because while he won the fight, that was Uriah Hall's first boxing match ever. And Uriah was not a young guy at that point either. The point I'm making with all this is I get what Jake is doing here, and fair play to him. Again, you do have to remember Jake didn't have an amateur career.
Gabe Rosado gives a thoughtful view on what this fight really means. He says experience cannot be ignored and points out that Julio has been through real wars in the ring. He has fought championship rounds, survived under pressure, and faced top opponents. These are things Jake has never done. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is still a former world champion who earned his success in one of boxing's toughest divisions. He held the WBC middleweight title and defended it multiple times. His boxing IQ, body strength, and ability to fight under pressure were well respected during his prime. While his recent years have not been as successful, the foundation of a champion still exists.
How good is Jake Paul's next opponent, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? Can he pull off the upset and beat Jake? Now, Chavez Jr. in his prime was a really solid fighter, 46-0, four-time WBC middleweight champion. This is him against Sergio Martinez, a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter. Hurt him bad with the left hook, dropped him in the 12th round, nearly got the finish, but Martinez did end up winning this fight. And then after losing the title in 2017, this is him versus Canelo in 2017. Solid pressure fighter, good body shots, decent hand speed. But these are pretty much his only highlights in the fight, because he pretty much lost every round 12-0. But still, he did go the distance with Canelo. But then you get to his most recent fight versus Uriah Hall at cruiserweight. He still got some decent body shots, but he looks considerably slower fighting at a heavier weight class. His footwork is a bit plotty, and he's not as fast. Look, Chavez Jr., he's not a bad fighter. He's never been a bad fighter. But what he is very undisciplined and considerably slower and more flat-footed at 39 years old fighting at cruiserweight. The technicality, the experience, it will give him a 25 to 30% chance. But the youth, the size, the speed of Jake, that'll give him more of the edge.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned until next time.